when are you an intermediate lifter? In the past, I would have given you a simple general answer, which is once you can bench 2 plates, squat 3 plates, and deadlift 4 plates, you are officially intermediate. However, after thoroughly thinking things through and looking at the testimonials I receive from guys who run my novice program or just people who leave comments down below, I've come to understand that what I said in the past is wrong because it neglects very important factors that are applicable to individuals. For one, it does not account for leverages, which is a huge part of strength development. In other words, if you're a very tall guy with super long arms, incredible wingspan, and when you touch the bar to your chest on a bench press, it's like super, super low, your elbow positioning, well, you might tap out your linear gains well before you reach 225. Likewise, if you have T-Rex arms, really, really short arms, and you try doing deadlifts off the floor, well, you might find your linear gains peaking in the 315 range, 315, 365. So because of body structures, we tend to see some fluctuations in terms of when the linear progress stops. On top of that, we have genetic outliers who sometimes they can go even past these standards. I've seen individuals hit 275 for reps while following a basic novice program. I've seen some guys hit a deadlift to 4.5 plates for reps following a novice program, and the same thing for the squat. So we're not accounting for the fact that this general strength standard that you must do 2-plate bench, 3-plate squat, 4-plate deadlift, we're not accounting for the fact that it's general and doesn't really have any real basis towards it. It's just a general recommendation. On top of that, one thing that it hugely neglects is relative strength. Because if you are at a higher body weight, you might find yourself surpassing these numbers. Whereas if you are at a lower body weight, and particularly a lower body fat percentage, you might not actually hit the numbers. So if you're 130 pounds and you're benching 225 for reps, that's not the same as being 180 pounds and benching 225 for reps. So we're not accounting for the relative strength factor, which is very, very important. And that's why some guys, they tap out early. They're hitting 185 and they're like, okay, I can't do anything more. They've done the weight resets. They've upped their calories, everything. But because of the relative strength, it's just not budging because from a proportion standpoint, they've tapped out their linear gains. And then the final thing is also genetics, okay? Some guys, their rate of adaptations, they're freaks. And they could just keep making gains. And of course, you have other dudes who they peak a little bit lower. So because of all these factors, I would have to say that just saying that you can bench 2 plates, squat 3, and deadlift 4, it's too general and it's not accurate. It's not scientifically accurate. It's not valid in a sense. However, it doesn't discredit it. I still think it's a very good range to shoot for, and I personally believe that the majority of the population will be within that range after about 6 to 15 months of training. When they surpass the novice phase, they'll be around that, okay? So I think it's very realistic. I think the vast majority of the population can hit these numbers in a fast amount of time. The only thing, though, is that these standards, 2 plate, bench, 3 squat, 4 dead, it's not 100% accurate. So give or take, you're going to be in that range, you know? Your bench, you might peak at 185, 250. Your squat, maybe 275, 4, 5 in that range. Maybe your deadlift, 4, 4.5, maybe even 3.5 if you have bad leverages. So that's what I would say regarding genetics. Some people just adapt differently. So with those things mentioned, I want to give you my new conclusion regarding when you are an intermediate lifter. Basically, once your linear progression gains cease, you're an intermediate lifter. That's how simple it is. And everybody's going to be a little bit different in terms of when they peak with the linear progression. So that's kind of the theme that I've been trying to portray in this video. When linear progression ceases, move on to an intermediate program. Simple as that. And that means if you're still making gains on a novice program, even though your numbers are past the 2, 3, 4 range, then keep doing so. It means you're still a novice lifter. So that's very important, okay? And because of age and genetics and all kinds of factors, it's going to vary from person to person. So instead of stressing out and saying, man, I got to hit these standards, think of it in terms of when your linear progression ceases. And for those who don't know, linear progression is basically, it's a standard way of adding weight to your workouts, you know? You go in, you squat 225 one workout, 230 the next, 235 the next. It's just a gradual system of increasing poundages in a linear type of way. Very just basic progressive overload. That's the linear progression, okay? Basically what you see in novice programs. And when I say peaking your linear progression, I'm talking about the big compound movements, mainly the squat, bench press, overhead press, and barbell row. I would say these movements in particular is how you should base your linear progression because it encompasses the major movement patterns, So that's really the best definition I can give you in terms of what entails an intermediate lifter. An intermediate lifter is someone who can no longer make gains off linear progression. And in most cases, it just so happens to be that for the vast majority of the population, those numbers will fall into the 225 bench range, 315 squat range, and 405 deadlift range. On average, plus or minus 15%, give or take, that's what we see for most lifters. So it's not that I was very off, in a sense, when I used to give those standards, but it's just that it doesn't represent linear progression ceasing for everybody. So I just wanted to clarify some of those details in this video and explain that it does have to do with anthropometry. There's a major anthropometry component because leverages are key. There's a genetic component. There's an age component as well. The older you are, you might peak out earlier. Lots of things to consider here. The relative strength, big one as well. If you weigh 130, you're not going to have the same strength as a 180 guy. Let's just get real here. So, in conclusion, once your basic linear progression ceases on the key compound movements, bench, squat, deadlift, overhead, barbell row, then you can consider yourself an intermediate lifter.